and we have to learn Sif Hey as well, which is connected to Sif Dalet. So I'm going to summarize what we saw in Sif Dalet so that we can continue from there, because it's a continuation. We saw that it says that if there's a tear within 3 etzbos, right, 3 finger breadths of the corner of the talis, then one cannot sew it up. Right? So we saw that there's a machlokes, 3 different opinions why one shouldn't sew it up. And depending on what the reason was, there were different halachas that came out the mice. The first opinion was that of Rashi. Rashi was worried that if we sew it up, you're going to have a string left over, and you're going to add another 7 strings and turn that into tzitzis. So we said it's only a problem if you're using, according to this opinion of Rashi, it's only going to be a problem if it's the thread you're using to sew it up is a thread which is kosher to use for tzitzis. Meaning it's the same, either it's woolen. Wool is called, we saw that wool tzitzis can put on any material, any garment, a garment of any material, or if it's the same material as the garment, right? We saw that if you have a woolen garment, you put on woolen tzitzis. If you have a cotton garment, you can either put on cotton tzitzis or woolen tzitzis. If you have a silk garment, either woolen tzitzis or silk. So the tzitzis always have to be the same, either the same material as the garment or wool, right? So therefore, this problem of Rashi is only going to be a problem if one's using a thread which fits these requirements, right? So if therefore one has a woolen garment, woolen talis, right, or woolen talis, tzitzis, woolen talis cotton, and he sews it up with a cotton thread, it wouldn't be a problem at all. Okay, that was the first opinion. That was Rashi.
The thread is cotton.
The regular thread.
The regular thread.
I mean, I think the other materials as well.
Most thread is nylon today.
Most is nylon today.
So either, but
if it's nylon, then it wouldn't be a problem
with
any. Sorry.
If it's nylon or cotton, it's not a problem.
If on a woolen beged, one could use anything other than wool. On a cotton beged, one should rather use the nylon thread.
Yes.
So the cotton thread would be a problem. Okay, and the second opinion we saw, Rav Amram Gon, we saw the following, that he said that the problem is if the corner gets detached from the garment and one re-sews it on, then that re-sewing it on does not make it part of the garment. The sewing does not make it part of the garment. A piece less than 3 by 3 is not considered a garment. It's considered just a thread. It's not considered. It's not large enough to be considered a garment. It's a very small piece. That small piece, even after it gets re-sewn on, does not become part of the talis. And therefore the problem is that if you put on tzitzis now, we're worried you're going to put it on that piece you sewed on, and that piece is not part of the garments. Your tzitzis aren't on the actual garments. So you only have 3 tzitzis, you haven't got 4.
If it's smaller than 3 by 3. If it's a bigger piece.
Right, if the piece is smaller than 3 by 3. If the piece is bigger than 3 by 3, it's not. The third opinion said no. So the third opinion disagreed with both those 2 opinions. The third opinion holds that we're not worried we're not worried about Rashi's reason. Also, there's the second reason we gave with Rambam Gon is also not a problem, because when you re-sew it back on, it becomes part of the garment. It's now part of the garment like it was. The third opinion, which is actually a different interpretation of Rav Rambam Gon, holds the only problem is if the corner gets detached with the tzitzis on it, and you re-sew it back on with the tzitzis on it, then it's a problem of Tasa V'lo also. So one would have to just untie it and retie the tzitzis after he has sewn the corner back on the garment. Okay? And we saw that the way the Mishnah Berurah paskins, based on the wording of the Shulchan Aruch at the end of the Sif, is that the third opinion is that we try lechatchila to be machmir for all the different opinions. However, if one can't, then we take the third opinion as the ikka.
Which siman is the third opinion?
This is all in Sif Dalet. This is all Sif Dalet.
Which siman cotton?
Which Sif cotton is what? Is this psak?
Is the psak? Yeah.
Sif cotton Yudzayin, the last one. Right. It's going on the last words of the Shulchan Aruch. Yirei Shamayim Yitzes Kulam Heicha De'efshe. And on that says the Mishnah Berurah V'Heicha D'Lo Yashen Oktina D'Svos Rav Amram Ikka V'Gam D'Tfira Choshev Chibur. Meaning we go that the Ikka is like Rav Amram Gon and not like Rashi. Right, so Rashi is only lechatchila to be machmir for Rashi, not to use, not to sew it up with a thread that is kosher for tzitzis. And also we hold the ikra is like the second opinion within Rav Rambam Gon, meaning that the sewing it up does reconnect it to the garment. The only problem is Tasa V'Lo Minasa. That's the ikra.
Which is After the second.
Which is, that's right.
Just untie
Right,
and retie.
so now let's just read the Sivkotten before that. Mishabur Sivkotten Tes Zayin. So it's on page 54, 6 lines from the bottom.
260.
6 lines from the bottom. Yezes Kulam. Now, because we're saying that the lechatchila, we try to use all these 3 opinions. Based on it, says the Mishabur, Al Kein Noi Hagin, Litzfor B'chol Kanaf Ma'talis, Chaticho Shal Beged Shleimo, Misholish Al Sholosh, Mishum De Bekama Begodim, Motzu Shafilu Hem Chadoshim, Yesh Bohem Tfiro, Toich Gimel, V'yesh Psul L'das Av Amon Lefi Dei Rishayna, L'chanab Zevkod Yud Beis. Because we're worried that, because there are a number of talisim which have pieces sewn on the edge of the corner of the garment. Therefore, because we're concerned about this, which according to Rav Amram Gon is no good, according to this, the first opinion within Rav Amram Gon, which is the second opinion we mentioned, if you have a piece sewn on in the corner, it's not considered part of the beged. And it's a problem if one puts tzitzis on that part. Right? Therefore, because of that, the minhag started that one always sews a piece of more than 3 by 3 finger breadths onto the corner of the garments. Right? And therefore, even if that little piece, there was a little bit piece sewn on in the corner, you have this bigger piece of more than 3 by 3, which definitely has a shem beged, because it's definitely called the garment because it's more than 3 by 3, and therefore that solves the problem, even according to the opinion of Rav Amram Gon. So that's where it comes from, this idea. Besides the fact to reinforce the whole, that's why we have on the corners of our garments an extra piece sewn on in the corners because of this.
It doesn't solve the last of Ramadan's, does it?
The last problem is just Tasav Leminosa. The last problem is just put on tzitzis after it's been sewn on. So that's not a problem. That problem doesn't need to be solved. As long as one puts on tzitzis after it's been sewn on, it's a problem. It's
right.
fine.
So you can't put the corner on with the tzit. That doesn't remedy that.
Correct.
Can you put it on and then retie it? Or did you make a problem by putting it on with the tzitzis?
No, if you untie it...
Well, let's say you sew it on the way it is, with the tzitzis on it.
Yeah.
Is it considered? It's considered a garment with 3 tzitzis.
Right.
So you just untie it and
untie
retie
it.
As long as you don't put it on with the 3 tzitzis.
Correct. Okay. Let's move on now to the next sit.
Just one question. Sorry. Do you have to untie it completely, or could you just untie the last knot and retie it like Malkish in addition?
No, you have to untie it completely.
Okay.
We said that the Ikka Midaraisa is the first knot, the one closest to the beggar. That's the important one.
Okay.
And also want to take it, put it in the beggar as well. I should preferably take it out of the beggar. Okay. Sif Hey. Imnikram. This is now a very common problem. Very common problem now. Sif Hey. Imnikram Minekev Shasitzis Toloi Boy Ulemata. The tzitzis pulled at the garment after years of use, and it made the little hole that the tzitzis were going through became a big hole. Right? It made a tear in the actual garment, and now the tzitzis are getting closer to the edge of the garment. Right? Someone actually showed me his talis, asked me a shaila if it was kosher or not. There was literally the last, just the way they sew the edge of the very edge of the garment. They have a reinforcement thread. That was the only thing that was prevented the tzitzis from leaving the garment. Right? It's completely torn to the end. The tearing slightly is very, very common, that you have a tear there. Right? Okay. So what's the halacha if it tore? In kodam hatolas tzitzis lakera, if they tore after the tzitzis was on the garment, right? The tzitzis were on the garment before it tore, which is the general case, right? Right? We're excluding the case of where he's putting the tzitzis on to a pre-torn corner. Okay? So if the tzitzis were on there before it tore, so you say tzitzis hoyo shom b'shas hakera, kosher, then it's kosher. Okay? Let's take each line with the Mishabur before we continue. Each line is a slightly different case. Let's see the Mishabur on this. Mishabur Sivkot and Yud Ches. Okay, Sivkot and Yud Ches, that's 4 lines from the bottom. Says the Mishabur, My B'Shaloi Tofer. We're talking about he hasn't sewn it afterwards. He hasn't fixed it up. The tzitzis are torn in the torn state. Kumash Malon, Afagav Deloy Nishtam Lo Kesher Agudom. Kumosh Kosav Le'el Simin Yud Aleph Sif Yud. The chiddush here is that we said that when one puts the tzitzis on the corner, there is a minimum shear, a minimum requirement, that the tzitzis have to be positioned, the hole where the tzitzis go through, has to be positioned a minimum of melacha-creative-work, which mentioned is the top bone of the thumb, which we said is, to be honest, all opinions we said preferably 4 centimeters, right? From the corner of the garment. That's the minimum requirement. The chiddush here, that's only when you put the tzitzis on the garment. If it got torn afterwards, and now the tzitzis are positioned closer to the edge of the garment than this melacha-creative-work, it's kosher. Right? It's only a requirement when one makes the garment. It has to be a minimum of 4 centimeters melacha-creative-work. If it tears afterwards, the garment is still kosher. Okay?
Until some point?
No.
As long as it doesn't fall off.
It's kosher, yeah. As long as it doesn't fall off, it's a kosher. It doesn't matter how big the tear is, it's still kosher. Okay? If he decides he wants to tear it, to sew up the tear, he doesn't need to sew up the tear at all. It's kosher. He doesn't need to sew up the tear. If he decides he wants to sew it up, right, then one just has to be careful of the halacha we learned in the previous if, right, Rashi, of the thread. If the beged is a woolen garment, he should sew it up with a thread made of a different material. He doesn't have to untie the tzitzis from the corner because it's kosher. We mentioned it's completely kosher. He doesn't have to untie it and retie it again. It was never possible. If the beged, the garment is made from a different material, for example, cotton. Also, one should not tear it up. One should not sew it up with a thread made from the same material as the garment. But that's Rashi, in accordance with the opinion of Rashi we saw in the previous sif. The shema yeshar bechutin l'shem tzitzis, where he's going to leave over a thread from the sewing and use it for tzitzis.
Oh, I thought it was the other way around. Maybe when you use this. Check in. It's Rashi. Shema yeshar bechutin. So it's not Yishara from a previous making of tzitzis.
No, we're right that when he sews it up, the thread, when he's finished sewing, he's going to leave that long thread left over and use it as one of the 8 tzitzis. Right? But after Yeshom tzitzis, well, we mentioned this, right? You asked on Sunday that if there's already tzitzis there, then what's the problem? So he says, after Yeshom tzitzis, loy plug b'zeh. The Chachamim said that one may not use it, even if there's already tzitzis on the garment. This is still a problem.
They don't differentiate.
Yeah, they don't differentiate. One should use strings of a different material. Even better, says the Mishabura, if one can, is not to use a white thread at all. Use a coloured thread. Because we only make tzitzis from white thread. Therefore, if one uses a coloured thread, then that's also super. That's the best way of doing it. Then one wouldn't have a problem. Then one solves the problem, the Rashi problem, if one uses a coloured thread.
Even if it's coloured wool.
Even if
it's coloured wool.
Well, one should preferably not use wool. The best thing is to use.
It doesn't solve the wool problem.
If one uses a woolen, it does solve the problem. It's better to use if one has a woolen. It's better not to use a woolen thread.
Right.
If that's all one has and it's coloured.
Even if you're using a different mean, you should also try to use a different colour.
If one can, yeah. If one has to use a woolen thread, there will also be an answer to use a coloured woolen thread. But preferably one should avoid the woolen thread.
I have seen the hole itself. It's interesting. I never thought about it before. Reinforced in the way the buttonholes.
Excellent question.
Yeah. With dark thread.
So that's the reason.
That must be the reason.
That's the reason.
Yeah.
That's the reason.
Because that's so close to the string.
Right. We're going to talk about the reinforcement in a minute. Right. The tzitzis are often reinforced.
Right.
So why isn't there the problem of Rashi there? When one does that reinforcement, one's sewing, putting an extra thread in that corner. Why isn't that the problem?
I've seen it with black thread.
So you've seen it, excellent. So we're going to see, the Mishnah is going to talk about it soon. Okay, we're going to get there. Not sure if we'll get there today, but we'll get there. Okay. Let's move on now. Let's read the next halacha in the Shulchan Aruch. Okay? We're now on the last line of page 54, right? On the back and the top of the Shulchan Aruch. If it was torn, and there was a small part that was left untorn, and then he sewed it up, and then he put tzitzis on the corner, So if it's a woolen garment, then it's fine according to everyone. There's no problems, right? He sewed up the corner. There was a tear. He sewed up the tear. He put on tzit. This is okay according to everyone. The only possible problem could be is the problem of Rashi, right? And therefore he's saying that if it's a woolen tzitzis, then there's no problem even according to Rashi because he's using a thread that's not wool. And if it's the garment was made of a different material, and the derech is to sew it with to make the repair with a thread of that same material. He shouldn't tear it. He shouldn't sew it up according to the opinion of Rashi because he's using the same thread. Okay. If it was torn and he sewed it up, and afterwards he put on tzitzis, then then there's a suffix. It's unclear what is the suffix. Let's look at the Mishnah who is going to explain what the suffix is. Okay, what's the problem here? Okay. Okay. It says in the Mishnah of cotton, Chof Aleph. Okay? This is cotton Chof Aleph. V'nikra v'chula. What's a loima? Shenikra kulo minekev ad soif hasofa. It tore, the whole thing tore from the corner until the edge of the garment. Right? The whole corner tore from the corner to the edge of the garment. V'chein ikel isfuki ta'af im ha'beged hu shel tzema v'itferene b'chutei sha'ar minen. The Rashi bevadai mutter. According to Rashi, there's no problem if he's going to use a string which is a different material to the garment and it's not wool. The reason why the Shulchan Aruch is Mesupar is because he's concerned that one is not used according to Rav Amram one. It's possible according to Rav Amram. Why? Because it's torn entirely. We saw in the previous in the second opinion in the previous the first opinion of Rav Amram is that if it's torn entirely, it's as if it's not connected to the garment. And therefore it's not going to help, even if you put it on afterwards, because the resewing does not reconnect it to the garment.
If
Okay?
it's a small piece.
Well, it's torn from the corner to the edge of the garment. That's less than 3 exposed by 3 finger breadths, because the corner, the hole is always positioned within 3 finger breadths of the edge of the garment. So here it's definitely within it. Okay. Says the Mishabur, the reason why the Shulchan Aruch is Mesupar is because here maybe it's better. Why? Here we're not talking about where the whole piece is torn off. It's still connected to the garment. There's just a tear from the hole where the scissors put through till the edge of the garment, but it's still attached.
You're not reattaching.
Oh, it's still attached.
It's still attached. It's just torn from the corner to the edge of the garment, from the hole.
So
where
one
the
point
scissors
is
to the garment.
disconnected, but the other
Correct.
part is still connected.
So that's why the Shulchan Aruch is Mesupar, because it could be that this is fine even according to the opinion of Rav Amram Gon.
Right.
This is why the Shulchan Aruch is Mesupar. V'ayin b'taz shechoyle, u'pesik ein kan tofik. To kulo almin mitzvah by tzotzes tzitzis lachat-theory. The Taz is choylek on the Shulchan Aruch. He says there's no suffix here whatsoever. There's no doubt, no place for doubt. This is definitely okay according to Rav, even according to Rav Amram Gon. The only problem according to Rav Amram Gon is if a whole piece gets detached from the garment, and when we attach it, it's not considered part of the garment. Here, where there's just a tear, but it wasn't detached.
Yeah.
It's okay even according to the opinion of Rav Amram Gon. That's what the Taz says. He disagrees with the Shulchan Aruch. And the best thing to do, the best thing to be according to everyone is to mention this answer we gave before, which is to put an extra piece under the garment, to have an extra piece more than 3 by 3 finger breadths on the corner of the garment, to sew that over the corner, and therefore then one do it even according to this, even the doubt of the Shulchan Aruch will fall away here, because one has a piece more than 3 by 3 finger breadths on the corner. If you can't, then yesh alkol kataz. If you can't, then you can rely on the Taz. One can definitely rely on the Taz, bearing in mind that we mentioned that the opinion of Rav Amram Gon itself is only lechatchila. But the Eved, we mentioned that we hold that resewing it does reconnect it to the garment. Right? So here it says, so therefore one can definitely rely on this. But if one can, one should preferably sew a piece onto the corner more than 3 by 3 finger breadths to solve this problem.